Hi guys. So for a while now, the UK has been quite unfavorable for immigrants, and then most people are exploring opportunities in other countries. And there are so many nurses in the UK that are currently moving from the UK to Australia and then the US and New Zealand and Canada. And today I have done the work. I have brought you an Australian immigration lawyer. Yes, who's going to talk about all the opportunities in Australia, how to relocate to Australia the right way, the benefits, what we have to know if you intend to migrate to Australia. So I have here Ria
It's Freya
Fawole.
Fawole.
I'm so happy. Thank you so much for honoring my invitation and for coming here, guys. So Ria, would you just briefly introduce yourself and tell us what you do, who you are, just briefly, and then we'll, go into detail.
Yes, thank you so much for inviting me, Nanella. It's wonderful to have the opportunity to come and speak to your wonderful listeners who are interested in finding out about moving to the land down under. So, my name is Freya Fawole, and I'm actually the principal lawyer. I run an immigration law firm in Australia called Solvi Migration. The way that I came into this was I actually worked in the Australian Immigration Department for 12 years.
Wow.
So I actually worked in visa compliance, I worked in the policy program management, and that's where I trained as a lawyer, and then worked in the legal team training the visa decision makers, and then also worked in the immigration minister's office. So let's just say I had a little bit of experience on the other side before deciding. I think, look, it is a truly complicated process from the way out. And I know a lot of people will look to blogs and other things. And I thought, how about I set up a firm and use that knowledge to help people with migrating the right way? So that's sort of the background about me and how I came to set up Solvi Migration. And I have a bit of a special interest in nurses. So I was delighted when I received your invitation. We're focusing on that because, interestingly, registered nurses are number one on the skill shortage list in Australia. So many opportunities, a really good time. And another fun fact is that your visa applications are prioritized. So all healthcare professionals get prioritized visa applications. So that's a little bit about me and why I'm here.
Wow, that's a lot. Wow, I didn't even know all that prior to seeing you. Wow, I think there's no better person to talk about this than you. I am so honored to have you here, honestly. Wow. Most of my audience or most of my viewers are nurses, but we do have other healthcare professionals also that watch my videos, like doctors and medical laboratory scientists, nurse assistants, and social workers, and the like. Okay, but majority are nurses because I am a nurse myself. And yes, and so what are the routes for nurses and other healthcare professionals to migrate to Australia? You mentioned that nurses are a priority on the list of the shortage occupation in Australia, but what about the other healthcare professions? Are they also needed, or is it just nurses?
Look, they're absolutely needed in Australia, but when I was saying the migration is complicated, so we have these things called ANSCO codes. So it's like an Australia, New Zealand occupation code. And each of those different codes, the government has decided which visas are eligible.
Okay.
So we need to kind of assess for people, okay, which occupation code do you have? And interestingly, for nurses, there's somewhere around 15 different codes just for registered nurses. So there's different visas depending on which one. So this is where I guess I give myself a little credit for being able to position my clients with the best information so that they know which the best occupation is to go down. When it comes to healthcare professionals, with that in mind, a lot of questions I also get are from nurse and care assistants. They are available for migration, but there's a few tips that I would probably have there. It's going to be different to registered nurses. Registered nurses and doctors, we can look to pathways under what's called general skilled migration. So they can come through sponsored options, or they can come through general skilled, which is a little more independent. They get nominated by the state or federal government. When it comes to care assistants, they need to be sponsored. So there are labour agreements in Australia. So they need to find someone who is an approved employer willing to sponsor them under those agreements. There will be other processes that all of them go through as well, but those are kind of, I guess, at a high level, the different options. Interestingly, Australia has 140 different visa subclasses. So there is a lot to navigate that people don't realize.
Wow. I don't think we can exhaust all the options. Okay, but then probably we'll talk about the very common ones and then the ones that are more common or the better option for nurses or doctors to use, if that's okay. Yeah.
Nurses and doctors, interestingly, is going to be a little different. So I'll probably focus on those a little separately.
Okay. So then again, which visa option will be the best for nurses? I recall you said that even for nurses, there are different occupation codes.
Mhm, mhm.
So is it for, let's say, the different types of nurses, let's say mental health nurse, general nurse, or what makes the codes different if we're all registered nurses?
So it's more to do with the actual registration process and skills assessment. So in order to become a nurse to migrate to Australia, first of all, you need to be able to register with APRA. So APRA is the health regulatory body. All health practitioners will need to be able to register through there. The next step is to get your skills assessed by the Australian Nursing and Midwifery Accreditation Council, otherwise known as ANMAC. ANMAC are the ones who will be assessing your work experience against those different occupation codes.
Okay.
And this is where our legal expertise comes in, because I know for some nurses, they may have worked in different types of roles. So they may have been in mental health, then they may have been working as a surgical nurse. There's a range of different things. So we would be working to try and make sure that they're getting their skills assessed under the right occupation code.
Okay.
If we take the example of general skilled migration, it's based on points. So you
Okay.
want really good high points to make it attractive. To get higher points, we need to do things to make sure we get as much experience validated. So we'll be carefully picking which occupation code. So these kind of things can be a little bit tricky to navigate when people just sort of go through websites and they have a bit of a look or they look on forums. It's not often that clear. I'll pivot a little bit and talk about doctors.
Okay.
Doctors have an interesting pathway. So they do need to register with APRA. That registration acts as the skills assessment, because in order to register as a doctor in Australia, you're going to have to go through a lot more competencies and supervision before you're eligible. So it's a bit different. Whereas a nurse, for example, a lot of the nurses I'm working with, it's general skilled migration, because I can assist them in getting a nomination either by the state or the federal government. And that means they're not tied to an employer. So when you talk about options that are attractive, a lot of people like this, particularly going to the UK, will have a lot of, my brothers and sisters from African countries, from India, Nepal, so on. They go to the UK, they get stuck on temporary visas, they're tied to a contract, they can't bring their family with them. Coming to Australia, what I love is the general skilled migration pathway, because I can help my clients navigate all of that, and they can come to Australia as a permanent resident and bring their family with them. So that's what is my personal preference. I can also assist also with sponsored visas. If you have a sponsored visa, you can potentially be sponsored for permanent residency, but you are tied to that employer for 2 years. So it doesn't have the same level of independence as the other process.
Wow. What I like about Australian immigration is the fact that there's an option where you can actually get permanent residency from day one. Because Ria, I have been in the UK for 5 years and I just recently got my permanent residency.
Oh, well, congratulations. But that's a
That was
long time. That
such a
is a
long
lot of effort.
time. That was such a long time. So I really like the fact that in Australia you can actually do get that, from the very beginning. And so what about the nurse assistants? Is there an option for them as well? The care
There's
assistant?
absolutely, yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. The difficulty is because it needs to be sponsored under a labour agreement. So this is where I guess my government policy hat came in. As I mentioned earlier, I did work in Australian government for 20 years. We're currently coming towards the end of 2023. Next year, Australia is having an election. As everyone will be familiar, immigration becomes one of those things that political parties kind of posture with. And so there is a lot of focus. There's another new migration strategy that's been released. With the current government that we have is the Labor government. So Labor has a lot of union support. So when it came to care assistance, the Labor agreements that they set up are actually tied to a union. And there is some resistance in the aged care sector for employers to need to sign on with a union in order to be able to sponsor workers. So there's been a little bit of a tension there. So it is available, but I am finding it's hard to find people who are willing to sponsor, particularly for, say, nursing assistants and care assistants who haven't yet had the opportunity to work for them. So those who maybe came to Australia and studied aged care or something while they were here, they could have been working casually in the meantime. So the employers had a chance to get to know them, love them, they want to sponsor them. They are prepared to do that. I am finding for clients there is a bit of resistance for people they haven't met, whereas for nurses and doctors and so on, there is such a shortage. There, it is a lot easier in that regard.
Okay. What about nurses and doctors who are in, let's say, Africa or Asia? Would you say it's easier for those in the UK to migrate to Australia or to find sponsors than those that are coming from Africa or Asia?
It's more to do with the actual assessment and registration processes that makes it easier. So nurses and doctors who have gone to the UK first have done things like OSCE, or they may have done NCLEX if they've gone over to Ireland or to US, Canada, which is one of the kind of benchmark exams. They would have also done something like the IELTS or the OET or the PTE test. So their English test levels have also been validated. There is something, though, that all nurses and doctors have to face. Australia's English level is a little bit higher.
Okay.
So you need to have, if we look at the OET, you need to get a B all over.
Okay.
If you're looking at IELTS, you need to have 7.0 in every one of the four.
Okay.
Whereas I know for others, it's a little bit lower. So Australia does have that higher benchmark, and it doesn't matter even if you have been educated in an English-speaking country, it's still going to be there.
I see. So you've mentioned like the requirements, you've mentioned the English exam, and what other requirements do health professionals have to meet in order to be able to migrate to Australia? Aside maybe experience and proving their proficiency in English, what other thing?
Yeah, look, in terms of, I'll turn to the legal consultations that I do with clients, because often they'll go, well, I've got a degree from X country. It is actually more detailed and complicated than that. So as a migration professional, I have a subscription to the Education Department database. They look at every single institution around the world. So it's not just the country, it's the specific institution. And some clients might say, you know, I've done my degree in Nigeria. That degree may only equate to a certificate level. And then in other cases, the degree may be equivalent to a bachelor's or higher. It really depends on the specific institution.
Wow.
So we can't necessarily just kind of look at something and go, here's a degree, it equals that. We need to actually assess the qualification first of all. Then obviously the registration requirements. So meeting those registration requirements. You were asking about people who haven't been to the UK. I have some good news because I talk a lot also with the New Zealand Nursing Council.
Okay.
So people may be aware that they were changing their registration processes for nurses. So I have a little bit of a hot tip. It's actually going to be more straightforward.
Okay.
So the requirements have gone from 2,000 hours to 1,800 hours. And there is now an OSCE exam that nurses who haven't, for example, gone to the UK, they can go through the process. They travel to New Zealand to do the OSCE exam there, and they can get their registration. They just need to have the bachelor's from their home country and have met the work experience requirements.
Wow.
So it's now opening doors to others as well, which I was very excited to talk to them about.
Wow. And where can people find you? If you could leave your email for us as well, so that people can easily reach you if they have any questions that maybe I'm not able to ask today, or your social media handles or any other. So
yeah, absolutely. So you can reach us at hello@solvi.com.au, but we also have our website, which is solvi.com.au, and I have handles which are also Solvi Migration. So that's who we are. But I'm happy to share that for your show notes as well. But of course, we're available across most of the social channels,
Okay.
and you can also find me on a podcast that I host, which is called
Oh,
Making Australian Migration Easy.
oh,
So yeah,
okay.
there's lots of places where people can get more information, because I know it can be a bit of a minefield to navigate. The good news is it's wonderful once you get here,
Yeah.
and I'm congratulations on getting your permanent residency, but you
Thank
should
you.
consider Australia as well. We have more vitamin D.
I'm laughing about it. One of my friends just recently moved, and a content creator friend. I think you've interviewed her already, Nesdio.
Yes, yes.
Yes,
I got to meet her. She came to Sydney, and I happened to be at a migration conference at the same time. So it was lovely to meet her.
yeah. Okay, so usually those that are sponsored by, let's say, an employer, and or so will be tied to an employer for, let's say, 2 years. Usually, after the 2 years, do they get permanent residency immediately, or what is it like?
So it's again confusing for people. I realize that our system can be quite confusing. So you arrive and you are a permanent resident if you are on what they call a subclass 186 visa. So that's Dara's visa that she has come on. And you still, though, have a sponsorship requirement. And the reason that they did that is because they didn't want people going, yeah, thank you for the sponsorship. I'm a permanent resident. See you later. And they never show up to do the
Yeah.
job. So that's why they've tied that period. So you have the benefits of permanent residency, which means, for example, if you wanted to study, or you've got your children coming with you as well, they will be able to go in the Australian schooling system without needing to pay for international student fees. You will be able to sign up for Medicare benefits and all of those other types of things that Australia has. So you do get those benefits immediately. It's just that you are tied to an employer. And if you have issues with your employment contract, that type of thing, that's where sometimes it can be a little bit tricky. But again, I help a lot of nurses with this process, and the benefit of coming to have professional assistance is that we would be reviewing the employment contracts and making sure that they're doing the right thing, making sure that they've got the correct skills assessment and everything for you, so there's not issues with your process and you're protected. And if you do find that you come here and there are issues with the employer, then because you've engaged us, Solving Migration is a law firm, we can represent and we can actually extricate people from those sticky sponsorship situations so that they're not tied anymore and their permanent residency is still safe.
Wow, that is really, really good, because that does happen sometimes. So,
Mm.
but knowing that you have somebody, behind you just in case or should anything happen, I think that's really, really good. That's really good. So, guys, I'll leave Ria's details in the description on the screen. You can reach out to her. Probably I'm not able to ask her every question that you guys have. I realize that there is not so much information about Australian immigration, and now I think I understand why, because it's very, very complicated. Because when you go on YouTube, there are lots of people talking about UK migration, even people that just got here like a week ago now, they are immigration advisors all of a sudden. But with Australia, it's not really like that. And another thing is, for UK, we do have like a central hub or website where you can get everything and then well explained. That's the gov.uk website. In Australia, do you have resources like that or websites like that where people can go and get the very valid information straight from the government? Do you have resources like that?
Look, I wish the answer was yes. However, when it comes to the different types of visas, you would go to the Department of Home Affairs in Australia, their
Okay.
website. But when you talk about that overall migration process, there isn't one central area. Because as I was saying, you're going to have to become a registered nurse. So for some nurses, depending on where they've done their qualification, I may assist them to register directly through APRA in Australia. For others, I would get them to register via New Zealand, and then through a mutual recognition scheme that we have with New Zealand, we can then get their registration in Australia.
Okay.
That is not on the immigration website to explain that that's what a nurse would have to do. And then the next step would be going to the Australian Nursing and Midwifery Accreditation Council. So they are independent of government, but they are appointed by government to do these skills assessments. I find that they're very helpful. They've got some really good information on the website. The issue is, I guess, that technical understanding of how to get the right occupation code and to make sure that you're getting as much experience validated as possible. That can be a little bit tricky to understand. And then when we're talking about the nomination process, if you're looking to get nominated by the state or federal government, that's another separate process to the actual visa process, because you're actually asking one level of government to nominate you. So it's, as I said, it's a bit of a minefield. It's not like there is one place that you could go as a nurse to go, here's all of those steps that I need to go through.
I see. Wow. So would you say that would be like the main challenge or difficulty with migration for nurses to Australia? The fact that information is not like readily available and
People will jump onto blog sites, or they will jump onto, listen to other people that may not be professionals in it. I think it's really important that people do talk to others about it and understand, but then also get professional advice, because as I've explained, each case is going to be different. It can be the specific institution that you went to that can determine whether or not your qualification is going to meet the levels. We need to look at other things like the English levels and the requirement. For example, if we were looking to assist a nursing assistant, the IELTS requirements are not as high as it is for a nurse. So understanding all of those different requirements definitely takes some guidance.
yeah. So let's say I'm a nurse in Nigeria. I'm looking to migrate. I just watched this interview and I want you to assist me. I go on your website, maybe I put in my details. How much am I expected to pay for your services?
So the first thing is to book a legal consultation, which is currently at $330, and it's a 30-minute consultation. And what we do in that consultation, we get people to upload all of their documents. So we do the legal research before you come into that consultation that you've booked. So we've gone, like I said, and used those assessment tools to work out, okay, which ANSCO code is going to work for this person. Are their qualifications going to equate to the Australian standards? Are there going to be other requirements? So when they come into the consultation, we can give them that sort of overview of what different steps or things they're going to need, what they're eligible for, and how to navigate their migration.
Okay. So after the consultation, are there other further payments throughout the process?
There would be other, I mean, if you need professional assistance, it is complicated, it is long. So you're going to need to be prepared for a wonderful country which has got, I'm sorry to say, better pay than the UK for nurses. You're going to need to expect that there are going to be higher investments that you need to get ready for. But one of the things that I know that I do in my firm is to allow people to do it in payments. So they don't need to pay for everything up front. There'll certainly be charges for visa applications, there'll be registrations, you're going to need English tests, all of those types of things to factor in. And so this is when people always ask that golden question. They're like, but just tell me how much. It's like there is no magical figure. Without doing a consultation, we don't even know what you're eligible for or if you're eligible. So we need to assess all of those things, including things like your age, work experience levels, as well as the qualifications.
Okay. So with the amount you mentioned, is it US dollars or Australian dollars?
Australian dollars. Yeah.
Australian dollars. Okay. And in the UK, for instance, if you're coming as a nurse at the moment, you qualify to bring your dependents and your children under the age of 18. I know that for US, it's your partner or your spouse and your children under the age of 21. What is it for Australia?
So it's again another technical legal question. It may not sound like it, but it is. So absolutely, you can bring your partner and you can bring your children under the age of 18. Where children are over the age of 18, we'd need to look at the circumstances. So Australia recognises, for example, a lot of people when they're studying, they're at university, they're still living with their parents, they're still financially dependent.
Yeah.
So commonly what we would see is up to around the age of 25. But there can be other circumstances. For example, some clients that I work with, they may have an adult child who may have more dependency needs. They would still be counted as a dependent. So it does depend on the circumstances.
That okay, that is really good. So Ria, what would be your final words for people that are looking to migrate to Australia? What should we
Please
be
come. Please do
Okay.
it. Particularly for those healthcare professionals, we need you. Australia needs you. And you know, it is such a wonderful place. I love the work-life balance, as I was saying. Just having a consultation before I came to have a chat to you with a nurse who's going to be coming to Australia, and just having that vitamin D, the balance, the lifestyle. You know, I was out at a function today, out at the beach, and
You're,
I
you're,
get
you're,
my
you're
morning.
making me want to visit. I
Yeah,
might visit first and then yeah.
please.
My problem is it's just too far, you know. And
Mhm.
like and the time difference. Like now it's like 10 a.m. here, and I guess it's what's the time there?
So here it is 8:30 p.m.
You see? Okay. Wow. So we should come. Those are your final words.
Absolutely, please come. We welcome you. We're waiting for you.
Thank you so
And
much.
please get the right advice. Come and talk to me first. I'll definitely help you. I mean, my team are keen to help people to do it the right way, because I know there can be a lot of rumoring and a lot of, in terms of the mindset for people because they want to do it. But like any human being, you just want the quick answers. If it was that simple and straightforward, then everyone would have just been able to do it. So you have to be a little bit patient and put in the work and effort. Like you yourself, you know the efforts that you've put in to get your permanent residency. Deo as well, she put in a lot of effort to get to that point as well. So if you are determined and this is what you want, get the right advice, and we will get you the successful outcome.
Thank you so much for your time, Ria. God bless you. Thank you so much. All
You
right.
too. Thank you, everyone.